To discuss this further, we can bring in Henri Barkey, professor of international relations at Lehigh University and Adjunct Senior Fellow for Middle East Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Henri, thank you so much for joining our program today.
Thank you.
So, as
Thank you.
we heard a little bit more of what's in the agreement there in that report, what are each of the countries hoping to gain from signing this pact?
Well, starting with the Saudis are trying to send a message, especially to the Houthis, that if the Houthis continue to attack and to stop shipping in the through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, that there will be consequences. But I would say that this is not the beginning of a real alliance. This is just a message being sent to the Houthis and to some extent to the Iranians. But it is, you can also look at it as the beginning of something that in the long run may become more serious. But at the moment, it is, as your correspondent said, it is to deter the Houthis, to give the Houthis a second thought. The Houthis have become a real problem for the Saudis, and the Saudis may be tempted at some point to go after the Houthis if they continue to block shipping and attack the Saudis. And basically telling the Houthis, look, we have now Turkey and Pakistan with us, and of course the United States would also join something like this. Now, the Turks are looking for greater influence. Yeah, sure.
Now, Henri, you brought up the Houthis here. Recent days have seen an uptick on attacks there. Is this likely, now that this pact has been signed, is this likely to put an end to that? And I mean, we've also seen Tehran, dismiss this, and the Houthis act under guidance from Iran. So, I mean, can we expect any real impact here or not?
I think in the medium term, yes, I think you will see an impact. Yes, the Houthis operate under Iranian guidance, but they're not completely under their thumb in the sense that they will not do exactly everything the Iranians want because they themselves have their own interests. I mean, they want to survive, and they also know that if they push the Saudis too much, that the Saudis may really go after them. So maybe in the short term, you may see a few more Houthi attacks just to say, we're not taking this seriously, just to send a message. But in the medium term, I think the Houthis will probably reduce their activities against the Saudis because they know that the Saudis are getting very serious about taking them on.
And now, Henri, a lot has been made of this key tenet that an attack on one is an attack on all. How significant is this? Or are we reading too much into it?
I think we're reading too much into it in the following sense. This is an agreement that's at the moment is really on paper. There is no plans how to mobilize soldiers, how to deal with the event of an attack. So the details are missing. So it is not that this does not mean that tomorrow the three countries will respond to an attack, let's say on Saudi Arabia. So it's just at the moment it's just a message, right? And if there are attacks, then you will see. The Pakistanis have about 8,000 soldiers on Saudi soil and some aircraft, but that's it. I mean, this is not a huge commitment at the moment.
Now, Henri, I want to talk for a moment a little bit about Israel. I know the members here, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, there's a bit of a concern of Israel's regional ambitions in this. Ties are strained between Turkey and Israel at the moment. Where does this leave relations with Saudi Arabia and Israel? Because I know Washington is really pushing them to sign the Abraham Accords.
Look, I don't necessarily think that this is an alliance, quote unquote, against the Israelis, because the Israelis have no interest in messing with Saudi Arabia. On the contrary, they see the Saudi regime as a stable, an act of stability or an instrument of stability in the region. So in that sense, it's not has nothing to do with Israel. The other concern is that we have to remember that Turkey is a NATO country, and does this involve NATO? But that's another question. But I don't think it has anything to do with Israel.
Well, you bring up NATO there. Turkey is a NATO member. So, what sort of possible impact do we have with that? Are there potential conflicts of interest?
Uh, so remember that NATO as an alliance has a very specific regional focus, i.e., it is Europe, Northern Europe, and and the Arctic to some extent. Even Turkey, which is mostly not in Europe, NATO had to define Turkish territory as being part of its area of concern. So let's say an attack on Saudi Arabia and Turkish involvement, assuming there would be, does not bring NATO into the game because it is outside NATO's area of operation. Right? So in that sense, it doesn't concern NATO. But there is one way in which it concerns NATO, and that is that Turkey, as a member of the alliance, has access to a great deal of intelligence that come from NATO. Does Turkey then use the intelligence in anything it does with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan? That is the tricky question, and NATO would not want that to happen, and would require Turkey to clear any intelligence sharing in advance of operations. So that's where there is a problem with NATO. But otherwise, NATO is not involved in this and would not be involved even if there was a war, let's say, between Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Pakistan. Sorry, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan on the one hand against Iran or the Houthis. So it's outside NATO's area of operations.
And now, Henri, some analysts have said that this pact is in sort of direct response to viewing the United States as a less reliable partner in the region, Saudi Arabia looking to shore up ties with other regional powers. So, where does all of this leave Washington?
This is actually a very paradoxical question because when you look at the relationship between Donald Trump, I'm not saying United States, Donald Trump and the leaders of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, there's never been such good relations between an American president and the leaders of these three countries. So it's paradoxical that Saudi Arabia is initiating this. And I think the analysts are right by saying that there is a great deal of concern about American reliability, precisely because Donald Trump is not a consistent president. He says one thing one day, does the opposite the next day. And this is a little bit, yes, is a signal to the Americans. But it may also be the Saudis thinking kind of looking into the future, because Donald Trump is going to leave office in January 2029. We don't know who's going to replace him, but whichever president comes to power, there will be a reassessment of America's Middle East policy, foreign policy in general, and there is going to be a backlash in the United States against Donald Trump. So the Saudis are smart in the sense that they are shoring up, so to say, their deterrence, their relationships in advance of that change, right? So yes, it's a little bit against Donald Trump, but I think it's a post-Donald Trump relationship planning, because as I said, Donald Trump talks to the Saudi Crown Prince MBS almost weekly. So we've never had this kind of close relationship between an American president and Saudi leader, and also with Turkey as well. I mean, Erdogan was not seen well by the Biden administration. The Biden administration kept him at a distance, never invited him to Washington, and yet Erdogan is now really feted by Donald Trump. So from that perspective, it is kind of, if you want, a little bit absurd to think that the Saudis are putting this against the United States. But you can understand why the Saudis are concerned about American unpredictability, but also what will happen after Donald Trump leaves power.
Henri, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your expertise with us. That's
Thank you.
Henri Barkey, Professor of International Relations at Lehigh University and Adjunct Senior Fellow for Middle East Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations.